And every pain and every harm is only temporary. So it's best that we don't beat each other down or beat ourselves down over temporary issues. Hello, classmates, and welcome back to. Is this the 5th episode? Are we on number 5? Our 5th episode of What School Didn't Teach Me. I want to thank everybody who's been rocking with me, like everybody who's shared the podcast on their own platform, who've listened, who has given me feedback on how they interpret some of the episodes or how the episodes relate to them. Thank you. Thank you for sitting in the classroom with me. Thank you for learning together with me. Thank you for adding to the community. Thank you. Thank you. I cannot wait to see us grow. So I'm going to have a full transparency moment with y'all right now. I'm going to actually have 2, but I'm going to start off saying this. I feel like I've mentioned this talking about the podcast before. And anybody who's ever asked me about the podcast, I'm not hesitant to tell them this. I've had this dream since 2020. Like, I think it was December 20th, 2020. 12/20/2020. I woke up and I was just like, I want a podcast. But I was anxious and I was scared and I was stagnant and I was like, who is going to listen to little old me talk about life? And I haven't even lived life yet. And so I sat on it. I sat on the dream and I kept telling God, I said, God, if this is of you, then don't let me forget about it. 2 years later, I'm still thinking about it every day, thinking about it all the time, telling people that I'm going to start a podcast, but I ain't started it yet. So everybody's just like, okay. And at the end of 2022, God had put me through a couple different trials and tribulations where I realized, like, no, I am living life. And I can talk to people about the life that I'm living because I am sitting here living this life. And if I keep waiting on feeling like I've lived enough life to start telling people about my life, well, the people I'm supposed to impact, I might have missed them. I might have missed their season. So in 2022, God kept telling me, it's time. 2023 is your time. I said, all right, God, I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to be ready. So here we are. A month in. So thank you. Thank y'all. Y'all don't even know what it means for you to support me like this. I didn't even know what it meant to support people until I published this podcast, until I started advertising for it and I saw how people were riding for me. I didn't even really know what it meant to support people on a certain type of platform until now. And so I thank y'all. Like, I don't want y'all to think, I heard the story and it just goes unnoticed. No, it makes my heart sing. It makes my heart sing. Oh, hold on. Okay. I usually don't have to break up my recordings so often, but I really want to make sure I say this. I know in the last clip I was just talking about how I'm so grateful to everybody who was listening. And so that was one portion. But I literally just got off a very intentional and purposeful phone call. So I want to take this time to thank Belisha. Thank you, Belisha Rhodes, keeper of the vault. If you have not listened to the Venusian Vault, that is Belisha's podcast, where she talks about different ways that we can show it for ourselves. And she speaks to her own personal life experiences, which is something that she has encouraged me to do. And so, Belisha, if you're listening to this, I adore you. You already know that. You already know where we're going. Where this sisterhood is going. You know that this is God ordained. And I want to thank you for always calling and coming into my life at the perfect time. And so she's encouraged me to speak from my own personal life experiences. And I want to say this. I'm constantly saying that we are living this life thing together and that I don't want to be perceived as a preacher, as a teacher, or as a leader, but this is genuinely a community. And when I talk about things from a more general perspective and maybe not my life experiences, it can come off a little less impersonal. And so I wanted to talk about my experience today. Specifically attaching it to the Valentine's Day episode, Let's Talk About Self-Love. I talked about doing little things every day that make you feel good. So this morning, I got some not so great news. I got some pretty confusing and conflicting news. And I was like, I'm not going to let this mess up my day. Like, I cried about it a little bit, but I wiped my tears and I said, okay, what's next? Like, I'm not going to think about it right now because I don't want to. There are other things that I can do today. There are other things that need my attention today. So what am I going to do right now? And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take care of myself. So literally, like, I had a couple tears. I wiped those tears. I got up. I deep conditioned my hair. I don't deep condition my hair, y'all. Like, I usually only do that during a wash day. But they say, like, oh, deep condition weekly. I don't plan to start doing that. But I feel like my hair needed a little TLC. So I deep conditioned my hair. And I did that while I prepared for class. Like, to me, that's my form of self-care. That's something that I don't do every day, that I decided to do today to take care of myself. And so after I was done deep conditioning, I went into class. My class was pretty freeing. It was pretty free flow. It wasn't too demanding. And then I got dismissed from my second class. And so instead of stressing, I continued to take care of myself. After I deep conditioned my hair, I did my hair. Like, I styled my wig. I pulled my wig out of my suitcase because I hadn't touched it since I've been back to school. Pulled the wig out of my suitcase, styled the wig up, used my fresh new hot comb because I have a tendency to save things for special occasions. But why would I do that? It's a hot comb. Used my brand new hot comb, did my hair, wore my brand new dress that I have been saving for a sunny day because they need to pull me for sundress season. And I walked out the house and I went to the beauty supply to get some shea butter because I told myself I needed a brand new lotion. And I got some new wig caps. That's not important. And while I do not support retail therapy, because retail therapy is why I keep needing to ask my mother for money, I support taking care of yourself. I support turning bad situations into good ones. I support using self-care in an outlet not to ignore what's going on in your life, but to bring you peace in moments where chaos is about to start. And so I'll still handle my business. I still have business to handle today. But I know that I can say that I showed up for myself today because I got some things done. And so now I'm sitting here recording in my freshly pressed wig, ready to talk. Ready to talk and come and be open, honest, and transparent. So when I say that we are in this life thing together and that I'm still figuring it out and I'm still trying new things and I'm still trying to show up for myself, I mean it. I mean it. And I literally only brought that up. I try not to talk about myself so much on the podcast because, I mean, I'm here talking for 30 minutes, you know? But I brought that up so that y'all can see that these are literally things that I put in my everyday practice. And that's what it looks like for me. It may look differently for you, but we define self-care. Self-care for me is not anymore. It's not like doing a face mask and or a body scrub. That can be what it is, or that can be what it is for me when I feel like that's what I need, but that's not what I needed today. Like, I'm multidimensional and multifaceted, and sometimes I just need different things. Sometimes I just need to do my hair and put a cute dress on and go out and run an errand. That's what self-care looks like for me. That's what showing up for myself looks like to me. And this isn't even what the episode is about, but I needed to come on here and say this because, to be honest with you, I was anxious about recording this episode. I was anxious about recording this episode because I did not know if I knew what to say. But this podcast is literally meant for me to be a vessel. It's meant for me to be a vessel from God. So I pray over every episode and I say, God, if I don't know what to say, speak through me. If I don't know what to do, not my will but yours be done. Less of me and more of you. When my tongue freezes up, speak through me. Remove my tongue and put yours there. So I just need to share. I just need to share that. And so bear with me on today's episode because I feel like today's episode is powerful. It's probably a little more candid because, to be quite frank, I'm still anxious. And so with the 12 minutes I have left, I'm going to go into what today's episode is about. So today's episode, I haven't titled it yet, but it's either going to be called Watch Your Words or Watch Your Mouth. So if it's called Watch Your Mouth, then watch your mouth. Yeah, watch your mouth. And today's episode is about the power of the tongue. And in this moment, I'm realizing how God puts people into my life at the right time and how the people around me really do pour into me. Because I got a call from Felicia earlier, which really pumped me up to do this episode. But then my best friend, I think it was last week, sent me a sermon that this episode was actually based on back in 2020. I wrote the context for this episode back in 2020, and she sent me the sermon last week. And I had completely forgotten that this episode was based on that sermon. But when I listened to the sermon, it was a little different than what I wanted the episode to be about. And so the sermon that this episode is based on is called Watch Your Mouth. It's also called Watch Your Mouth by Jackie Hill Perry. And it's her speaking about the power of the tongue. And she mostly speaks about the power of the tongue in the way that we show up in this world and in the way that we praise each other. But this episode is going to be the way we talk about ourselves. Because quite honestly, if we want to be real with ourselves, the way that we talk to ourselves, the way that we show up for ourselves, the way that we address our own issues or our own selves affect how we show up in this world, affect how we talk to other people. There are things that I would never say to other people because I would never say it to myself. There are things that I say to myself that I wouldn't say to other people, but I know people who talk very reckless at the mouth to other people, but then they talk worse about themselves. You know, so the way that we speak over ourselves definitely dictates the behavior that we show up with in this world. And so I'm going to attach the link to the sermon. So y'all give Courtney a round of applause and thank Courtney. Thank Courtney for this episode and for bringing it back to my remembrance, because I noticed that the people God puts around me are really being used by God to pour into me. And I'm so, so thankful for you. So I'm going to put the link in the footnotes or in the description of the episode. Hopefully you are able to copy it, but I would highly suggest watching it. And so I'm going to read off some of the notes that I wrote on the episode back in 2020 with some remembrance of what I gathered watching it recently. And then I'm going to go in about this episode. And so Jackie Hill Perry starts off and she says a couple of things about the tongue. She says that the tongue is accountable, the tongue is powerful, and the tongue is inconsistent. And with the same tongue that we bless the Lord our Father, we curse the people made by God. She says that a plant's fruit is relative to a plant's nature. Their words, your words, and your worship must match. You cannot shout blessings and be hateful in the same setting. These are just my notes. It says if you want to know what your heart really wants or how your heart really feels, pay attention to the words your heart produces. She continues to say that words make worlds. I am a firm believer. The things that you say about yourselves or about your situation in your own life create your reality in that situation. I could be going through hell and still speak highly and speak peace over myself, and I will only experience peace. I may experience anxiety in moments where I step outside of that peace, but I definitely will be doing better than if I'm speaking badly over this situation. Getting control over our words will help us get control of our whole body. So in the sermon, she mentions being on top of a horse and how the horse has a bit. And so because the horse has a bit, we have a lot more control over the horse than we realize. And so our tongues are such powerful things because the idea that the power of life and death is in our tongue is a real thing. Have you ever set a goal to anybody and they spoke down on your goal or they laughed about your goal and it made you feel diminished? The power of life and death is in the power of our tongues. We have so much more control than we realize just on the things we say, and we use our tongues so recklessly that we don't even always acknowledge, or we are not always holding ourselves accountable for the way that we show up in our spaces using our tongues. Our job is to change our vocabulary, to remove certain things from our vocabulary, especially things that we don't have. My mom is always telling me to not speak lack over my life, or that we don't speak lack over our life. We speak abundance, we speak peace, we speak wealth in any circumstance, setting over our lives, and indeed, that is what we end up receiving. So I wrote down that words can hurt, but they can also heal. They say, watch Jesus. Watch how Jesus used his words. He had redeeming words. He had authoritative words. He spoke hard words. He had hard conversations. He spoke obediently. He was always obedient to God. And when we see the way that Jesus' life played out, he lived a really good life. He was never anxious. He was always at peace. He was never worried. His disciples were literally upset at him for not being anxious while they were on a sinking boat. And that was because of the words that he spoke over himself. That was because he knew his creator. That was because he knew his creator, and that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But looking at the kind of life that Jesus lived and the kind of conversations that he had, he was always at peace. And you never heard him speak negatively over what was going on with him. Even when he knew he would be betrayed, there was never hatred or spite or anger or anxiety coming from Jesus. So I know everybody don't believe in Jesus. Everybody don't love the Lord like I love the Lord. So we're going to get back on a general consensus. The way that we speak over ourselves and over our lives and over our situations impact our reality. The truth is, a lot of times we make jokes and we say negative things about ourselves or our situations and we pass them off as jokes, but our brain doesn't really understand it's a joke. The more things you speak over yourself, the more you will attract. I speak life and abundance and wealth over myself, so I attract that. That's why we talk about affirmations so much. That's why we need to watch our mouths. We need to watch what we say about ourselves. And so I guess this episode is really just a little bit of background to some of our previous episodes because we've talked about affirmations. We've talked about how to show up for ourselves. We've talked about self-love, but let's be real, it's as simple as watching our mouths. And so when I say it's as simple as that, I don't want you to think from a perspective of, all you got to do is change your language. Like it's easy to change your language, or it's easy to watch what you say about yourself, or watch what you say about your environment, or to be mindful of the things or of the life that you speak over yourself. Because mastering the power of the tongue is something to be practiced. It's hard. It's hard when our immediate thought is to be negative. Like, it took me a long time. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I started really seeing the bright side of situations until I got to college. Until I got to college and I started forcing myself. Like, I would get in frustrating situation after frustrating situation, and I eventually started forcing myself to be like, well, here's the bright side. I'd be like, well, I failed my test, but on the bright side, I did all the, I started out strong in the beginning. So all the work that I did before, while I have a D on this test, I now have a B in the class instead of a D in the class, And that's something that, even though I might have wanted an A in the class, that's something that brings me peace. And look, Jasmine Camber is not promoting bad grades. I am not promoting you failing tests. Please study. If you're listening to the podcast right now instead of studying, please don't do this. Because I don't want your mom calling me talking about I was just listening to the podcast. Go study, please. But I'm saying the way that you speak over situations in your life alters your peace. And that's really what it is. I don't know what everybody else is trying to achieve in this life, but I'm trying to achieve peace. I was just talking to Felicia about how the goal in this life is freedom. The goal in this life is to show up authentically in every space and be peaceful about it. To be at peace wherever I am because I know I'm showing up authentically. One way that I have maintained my peace is to be mindful of how I speak over myself and over my situations. Especially because I am a very anxiety prone person. Like I go from 0 to 86 real quick. And then from 86 to 105 super fast. So I be trying to hit that 86 and bring it back down to 0 before I hit 105. And so I literally have to speak well over myself because my thoughts have a tendency to spiral. And so when I started speaking life over myself, I also started speaking to myself about the things that I deserve. And then I started giving those things to myself. Like it's a building block. I guess that's what this is. Like self-growth, self-love, this journey is a building block. And one of those building blocks is to be mindful of how we speak over ourselves, to speak positively over ourselves, to be objective about our situation, to sometimes take our emotions out of a situation and be realistic about what's really going on, and to talk ourselves down off of a cliff. You can't do that if you're talking negatively about yourself. You can't do that if all you're thinking about is how bad a situation is. It's mind over matter. It's mind over matter. That's all it is. And the more life you speak, the more at peace you are. Like this morning I got bad news and I said, God is going to handle it. And at the end of the day, I'm going to be okay because God is going to handle it. And then I proceeded to take care of myself. Instead of stressing and wallowing and trying to figure out how I was going to handle my business, I spoke well over myself. No matter what happens, I'm going to be all right. And then I gave it over to the Lord, which means I stopped stressing about it. And that brought me peace. Like, I literally wasn't even thinking about it until I started recording this episode. And even then, I'm still not stressed. Because why? Because I speak well and I'm going to be okay. And I know these things about myself because I speak so highly over my situation so often that when I see the benefits of it, which is peace, which is love, which is clarity, I know that I don't have to worry about anything. Speaking highly of yourself keeps you from being anxious. And that's why it's so hard, especially for anxiety-prone people. Like I said, I'm an anxiety-prone person. So when I start thinking bad, I start thinking real bad, which means I have to stop myself. I have to stop. I have to breathe. Maybe take a mindfulness moment. Maybe do some deep breathing exercises. My mom likes to tell me to do the shape exercises, which is where you take a couple deep breaths and you identify the shapes and colors that you see in a room, so that I can recenter myself and correct myself and correct my mind on what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, to give myself the space to speak well over myself and to speak peace and clarity over myself before I have the opportunity to speak negatively. So, when you find yourself about to speak negatively over yourself, stop. When you find your mind spiraling, when something happens and it just sounds like terrible news, like, stop. Take a deep breath. Because as my mother likes to say, nothing is the end of the world. Nothing is the end of the world. That no matter what happens, we'll be okay. We'll keep living. Things might suck, but it won't kill us. And every pain and every harm is only temporary. So it's best that we don't beat each other down or beat ourselves down over temporary issues. It's all about being kind to ourselves. I was going to say it's about forgiving yourself, but it's really about being kind to ourselves in the first place. It's about not even getting to the point where speak ill over yourself and now you have to apologize. No, it's about correcting yourself in the moment that it happens. So that's my challenge. That's my challenge for this week. That's your homework for this week. Come on, we just started giving out homework. Your homework for this week, for my anxiety-prone people, for my negative talkers, for my pessimists, for my realists, because some of the realists be pessimists and just be hiding it. Come on now. For my peacemakers, for my problem solvers, when you find your mind spiraling, when you find yourself speaking negatively over a situation, when you find yourself getting anxious, or when something happens that's unexpected and out of your plan and it starts to make you feel some type of way, stop. Before you have a chance to talk about how it sucks, take a breather, maybe say a couple affirmations, and speak well over yourself. Tell yourself you got this. Tell yourself, this situation is different, but I know how to handle it. And even if I don't know how to handle it, I can find the answer. Speak confidently over yourself. That's the homework for this week. The homework for this week is to exercise the affirmations, to exercise speaking highly over yourself, to stop anxiety in its tracks when it's trying to overwhelm you or overcome you, to stop and take a deep breath and recenter and regain yourself and remind yourself how capable you are. Progress isn't going to happen overnight. You might not feel perfect after the first affirmation, or after the first quote unquote come down. You might need 3 minutes instead of 30 seconds to recenter yourself. That's okay. It's not about getting it right every time. It's about learning ourselves. I had to teach myself that there is not a right and wrong in everything. I was so stuck on what was the right way to do things growing up so that I didn't do the wrong thing, that by the time I got older, it blew my mind to come to the realization that there's not a right and wrong in everything we do. So when it comes to growth and when it comes to progress, it's not about right and wrong. It's about the growth. It's about the journey. It's about learning. It's about learning ourselves, what we need, what works for us, and getting in the habit of giving ourselves those things instead of ridiculing ourselves for needing more. It's about giving ourselves what we need instead of complaining about how we need more or how we don't have or how we wish we could. So yeah, I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I'm gonna get off my soapbox and I'm gonna leave y'all with the challenge, with the homework of this week. To say some affirmations, to stop anxiety in its tracks, to speak highly over ourselves in any situation. And I want y'all to tell me how it goes. I want y'all to tell me if you were impacted. I want you to tell me what may be trial and error for you, what works, what didn't, what you found out about yourselves. Like, let me know. Thank you for listening to the 5th episode of What School Didn't Teach Me. 5th of many. Like, I'm gushing over a 5th episode, but we finna have 50. Like, we not stopping. But I thank y'all. I thank y'all for being patient with me. I thank y'all for accepting me when I show up. So, again, I'm gonna get off the soapbox, and I'll see y'all next week. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Remember, this is meant to be a conversation. So as much as I talk to you, I would love for y'all to talk back to me. Message us on Instagram and Twitter at WSDTM Pod. Or send us an email at whatschooldidn'tteachme@gmail.com. Better yet, send this episode to a friend and start the conversation there. And let's see what we can learn from each other. If you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening on. Trust me, it matters. Oop, there goes the bell. I can't wait to hear from y'all, and I'll see you next week.